Hello, and welcome to a screencast on Increasing Influence of Europe from Bentley and Ziegler's Traditions and Encounters, 5th edition. This chapter covers Europe from around 1000 CE to around 1300 CE. That's a pretty narrow slice of time in a world history class and shows one of the reasons why Chapter 19 is one that I believe AP World History students can read a little more selectively than some of the other chapters. There are a few big ideas to look out for, and I have one special recommendation. So I will take you through that. Welcome aboard. One thing you might pay attention to in this chapter is the city-state of Venice, which might be a useful example to use in essays or short answer questions about this time period. I think you can see all of the main themes from chapter 19 through the lens of Venetian history. So, Venice is a growing city. Productive agriculture was leading to urban growth during this time period in Western Europe after 1000. We don't have any large empires in Europe at this time, not in the way that usually means. So it's very decentralized. And as a city state that did control other territories, Venice is a really good example of this. Venice was an explicitly Christian city and the Western kind of Christianity. And it was related to its relationship with the Islamic world was complicated, as we say on the social media sometimes. At times, Venice was at war with Islamic states, but at other times, it was engaged in robust trade. So, both things. So you can think about Venice as we go through this as one example. Okay, let's take a look at the big ideas from this time period as we see them in this chapter. So one is the growth of communication and exchange networks. You can read that. So we do have during this time period in Western Europe an increased volume and range, so goods going farther, coming from farther, of trade. This continues a pattern from the period before. After the fall of the Roman Empire, trade within and between Europe and the rest of the world decreased, but then it had already been increasing before the year 1000. In particular, I think it's useful to look for and understand the term letters of credit. It's one of those AP terms that you can use well as evidence of a new commercial practice. It would be similar to the sock or check in the Islamic world or flying cash from China. So an early kind of paper money, a letter of credit is not exactly paper money, but it is a way of putting value in paper. So maybe you could say that it is. So I would keep a lookout for that. You can see on the map here the various trade networks, including the Hanseatic League and the Baltic Sea. That'd be a pretty deep detail, but could be useful in your writing. And the result of this, of course, will be the growth of cities in Western Europe. Okay. I would say the biggest or most significant event that's in chapter 19 is the Crusades. In fact, that besides letters of credit and those trade relations, and then the Crusades, those are the sections that I recommend that AP World kids read the most closely. So I've bolded this term here, the Crusades, and then the related concept of the Reconquista, which was happening in Spain. Now, Venice was part of that, so I've circled it here on the map. The Crusades were a religiously motivated attack on Muslim states in the Middle East by European Christians. So European Christians from the Pope, Western Christians. The Orthodox Christians are kind of involved, but there's one of the Crusades where the Venetians attack Constantinople. So you have Western Christians and Eastern Christians fighting each other. But the first three Crusades involve Western Christians going to the Holy Land, which also holy to Muslims, trying to recapture or capture Jerusalem. It's really actually not exactly accurate to say recapture Jerusalem because Jerusalem had never been part of a Christian empire. I guess for a bit under the Byzantine Empire, but I mean, there were Christians there for sure since the time of Jesus, but it was not part of a Christian state during most of its history, or even more than a tiny slice. But Christian knights were going there to conquer it. But this was also, the Crusades were also a pilgrimage. There were people who were going just to go to Jerusalem. And in this way, it was a continuation of a medieval trend of Christians going to holy sites, so including Jerusalem. In terms of world history, the long term effects of the Crusades are important because they were one of the mechanisms by which the intellectual heritage of Dar el Islam made its way into Europe. And of course, Dar el Islam had accumulated, organized, translated, built upon heritage from classical times. So Greek classics start to make their way into Europe, first through Spain, and then later through, with returning crusaders. And while in the Middle East, the elites amongst the Crusaders, like the Christian knights, realize there's a lot of nice things in Asia, like sweets and spices and soft clothes. I mean, luxury goods. And so the taste for those luxury goods, literally or figuratively, grows following the Crusades. And so that's part of the general up, trend up. Sorry, it's part of the general trend upward of inter-regional trade. So Europe to North Africa, Europe to the Middle East, that's happening throughout this whole time period. Okay. So those are the two biggest ideas: the increased trade and looking for commercial practices like bills of exchange, then the Crusades, how that both shows conflict and leads to increased cultural diffusion and ongoing trade relations. Okay. Another continuity from the period before 1000 for Western Europe and for Eastern Europe is that Christianity continues to define the area. That's one of the things, like where does Europe end and Asia begin? Well, there's really no clear line. People will say the Ural Mountains, but they're really not much of a geographic or an ethnographic barrier. So it's ultimately like, how far east does Christianity extend? I mean, that's what it was, and then it gets kind of fixed at some point in time. So you can continue to look for Christianity as a defining feature. Now, there would be Jewish and Muslim minorities in different places in Europe, and in Spain there are still some Muslim states throughout this whole time period. But generally speaking, there's some Jewish minorities in several places in Europe, and then overwhelmingly Christian elites. Okay. This trend here continues something that you would have seen in chapter 16, so you can apply that. One term that I've found that world history students often need to learn is this term serf. So serfdom during this time is starting to decline in Western Europe. And then later in the next time period, after 1450, especially in the 1600s, it will start to increase in Eastern Europe. So students should kind of know what serfdom means. A serf was a peasant who could not leave the land, and that status was inherited. So in this way, it resembles slavery in the later time period in the Americas a little bit. Now, the difference is an enserfed person, a serf, was not a slave. They weren't enslaved. Nobody owned them. But their labor was also not free, and they were not able to leave, the land where they were born. So in that way, it is a kind of coerced labor. So that's a term that's worth knowing. There's also this ongoing feudal relationship where the social structure includes people with privileges who are called lord or lady, and they have titles. So like duke and earl, or they could be lower level nobility. It might be gentry is a word for that, like gentle, like gentleman, gentlewoman. But they have privileges and authority, and that's still part of the structure of what's happening. It's very decentralized. So these lords have political power in the case, in place of, a centralized monarch or emperor, governing territories. Towns were outside of this process, meaning they weren't governed by noble lords. Although oftentimes, especially toward the end of the period, nobility would also have a nice townhouse, like a literal town house, where they would invest a lot of money to show off their wealth. Those towns are getting wealthier and more significant as time goes on because of these increased trade relations. All right. So you can kind of see here the productive capacity had been was predominantly agricultural, and that created a social structure with the peasantry and noble lords. But over time, there's changes to that coming, and especially in the next time period. They're starting to build here in the 1300s, 12 and 1300s, with towns becoming more important, and then the elites in towns who aren't necessarily noble lords gaining more influence. So more on that to come. It's kind of like a little bit of a what they call foreshadowing. Okay. And this continues, this economic productivity of agriculture is going to continue things that we're seeing in chapter 16 also. So you could maybe look back at your notes on that if you read that thoroughly, or if you didn't read 16 thoroughly, just bear down on it here. And you can see that there's increasingly productive agriculture that's undergirding all these trends. Okay. I believe I have gone through these things already. You see an illustration of the Crusades there. But the idea would be that the states in Europe are regional, or I guess regional within Europe. In world history terms, they'd be sub-regional, within Europe itself. You do have a few kingdoms that are starting to become more powerful in France and England, and then you have lots of small and important states in Italy, Iberia, and Central Europe, the German lands. These groups will work together sometimes, like in events like the Crusades, but generally speaking, they're at odds. And finally, I can recommend the Crash Course episode on the Crusades. Some of you may be power consumers of Crash Course, or you may only watch the occasional episode in class. I think this one is well worth watching because it makes some sophisticated points. It's not just recounting what happened, it kind of gives you some sort of sophisticated ideas. So if you're interested in the Crusades, I can recommend that as a resource. So enjoy chapter 19. Remember, this is one you could read more selectively as long as you're paying attention to the main ideas. All right, take care, and we'll see you soon.